development is also absolutely necessary, especially as it pertains to the airports. Mr. Speaker, municipal corporations, they in their districts will know where the homes of the elderly are, where the maternity homes are, where convalescent facilities are, where chronic care institutions are. They know the terrain, they know their communities, and they will know the best places for the discharge of fireworks and those areas where it will be dangerous. Mr. Speaker, one of the gaps in this legislation is that even as we look at areas that need to be protected or where fireworks, the discharge of fireworks should be prohibited, it does not address the discharge of fireworks in residential areas which may or may not be densely populated. Mr. Speaker, the inclusion of the municipal corporations in the process will ensure that permits are reviewed with on-the-ground knowledge and not in a vacuum. Again, we do not think that this is an obstruction. We think this is coordination, and we think that it does strengthen not just the legislation, but the effect of the legislation. And Mr. Speaker, there was one issue that I'm hoping that the AG will clarify in his winding up. The bill protects private hospitals under the Private Hospitals Act. Now, that is one of the differences between our draft legislation and the bill that the government has brought. And in the Private Hospitals Act, that definition includes homes for the elderly and maternity homes, and they are expressly identified. However, there are two issues here that do bring me some concern. Mr. Speaker, where you have homes for the elderly that have less than 5 persons, what happens there? And also, are hospices also covered under this definition, or the use of the definition in the Private Hospitals Act? And Mr. Speaker, I raise that because most citizens will not understand how those definitions work. Most citizens are not going to be privy to that sort of cross-referencing that takes place in our legislation. So to most citizens, they will look at a home for the elderly and say, well, that will look like a hospital. They will look at a maternity home and say, well, that will look like a hospital. And without education, people may violate this law unintentionally. Mr. Speaker, for this law to work and for it to work well, the public must understand where fireworks can be discharged, what penalties apply, what facilities are protected, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, because of the polarizing nature of this legislation, they have to understand why the rules exist. There is a segment of this population that we accept will oppose the bill. We accept that, Mr. Speaker, and those are the ones that the government and everyone here who is an elected representative must concern themselves with, because the goal should not be to fine people into submission. The goal should be to get public buy-in, and for this not to be seen as yet another revenue-generating initiative on the part of the government. So it requires, Mr. Speaker, a national education component, and I understand that that would not be in the legislation itself. I am just speaking as a member of this House who genuinely wants to see this legislation work. So, Mr. Speaker, it is about building a culture of responsible enjoyment. So that the bill, nothing in this bill stops someone from enjoying fireworks. They can still celebrate. They can still do it, but now they have to do it responsibly. And they have to do so with regard for their neighbors, and they have to do so with regard to vulnerable communities. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to ensure that the legislation does not create spaces where either there are groups of people who cannot do that, or there are groups of people who are still impacted by the misuse of fireworks. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that education is key to achieving that, and municipal corporations, in particular, with their local knowledge, must be partners, have to be partners in that public education effort. Mr. Speaker, I want to draw you to an article in the Newsday dated Sunday, 23rd November 2025. And the headline is Culture Minister, Carnival Venues at Queen's Park, Savannah and Chagaramas. And the first paragraph of the story, Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have?
Again, but would you require 15?
I will, Mr. Speaker. The first paragraph reads that the government has earmarked areas within the Queen's Park Savannah and facilities in Chagaramas as alternative sites for Carnival 2026 events following a sweeping ban on fetes at major public sporting facilities. And, Mr. Speaker, it refers to comments made by the minister during a sitting in the House on November 21st. Mr. Speaker, under this bill, the ability for fetes, the ability for our celebrations for Independence Day will be threatened. The ability to have those types of events will be threatened. Simply because the Savannah sits between two zones that are protected. It sits between the zoo and it sits between the Port of Spain General Hospital. And so, and private hospitals. And, Mr. Speaker, the Savannah is not alone in that. There are locations within the country that sit in zones like that, particularly when it comes to hospitals. So, Mr. Speaker, that location of the Savannah in that disputed zone does create an issue for our Independence Day celebrations. And, Mr. Speaker, beyond the Savannah, the use of Chagaramas also creates an issue because large portions of the Chagaramas Peninsula are used as our forest reserve. So, if it is that we are saying to our fete promoters at Carnival time, which is right around the corner, if we are saying that you cannot go to certain venues, national sporting facilities, but we will allow you to go to the Savannah or to go down to Chagaramas. But under the legislation, we are saying that those areas, you cannot use fireworks. We are not acknowledging the fact that in fetes, fireworks and pyrotechnics are part of the experience in those parties. And, Mr. Speaker, I believe the Promoters Association referred to the ban on the facilities as a death knell. What I would not like us to see is legislation coming to this House that puts a further nail in the coffin of an already vulnerable sector. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that there is, or we would like to see some sort of a structured approval mechanism for national celebrations and cultural events, particularly in areas where those events will be held in or in close proximity to prohibited areas. But Mr. Speaker, it will also be useful for the government if it is their intention to continue this long celebrated national tradition of fireworks in the savannah, to create a level of certainty around it, not just for the organizers, but for the patrons as well. So, Mr. Speaker, we do think that, that this will add value, but, Mr. Speaker, that is also taking into account that the minister does have wide powers available to him to circumvent sections 99, 100, and 101 and issue exemptions as he may see fit. However, Mr. Speaker, our position is that this protects the minister from the argument of bias. It says there is no introduction of, well, you gave promoter X and you didn't give promoter Y. And it, again, encourages a level of certainty around promoters and event organizers. And we do think that if that process is open, if it is transparent, that it aids both all promoters, organizers, and patrons to know that their events are not going to be jeopardized by this legislation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, enforcement. No matter what we say here, this, as I said before, this legislation will simply be words on paper if it is not enforced. And enforcement is also addressed specifically in the Law Reform Commission's paper. So we have to confront a reality. We have to confront the reality that most citizens are going to follow the law. Most citizens are going to apply for permits. They are going to comply. They are not the problem, Mr. Speaker. The challenge lies with those who do not intend to comply, who will believe that they could circumvent that law and nobody will come for them and that sort of thing, and those who knowingly discharge fireworks illegally and cause harm without any consequence to them, or believing that there will be no consequence to them. And the law, Mr. Speaker, must be designed to address them, not the law-abiding citizens, but the citizen who believes that it either doesn't apply or they will not get caught. And that brings me, Mr. Speaker, before I continue, it brings me to the section 6 of the bill. Clause 6 of the, thank you, colleague. Clause 6 of the bill, where the Evidence Act has been amended, and has been amended to allow for a video recording recorded by means of a mobile phone, tablet, iPad, or any other similar smart device shall be admissible as evidence, and then further that the definition for information system is changed by inserting after the words generating the word recording. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how effective this will be. Firstly, it will be after the transgression has taken place. Secondly, there's nothing here that I think does not allow for altering of videos for AI, or for videos that are taken on some other day purporting to be on the night of the infraction itself. So I am not certain as to how this is going to improve enforcement. And also, Mr. Speaker, it seems to me that in the inclusion of this clause, it now it transfers the responsibility from the state to the citizen for monitoring themselves, putting it in the hands of the citizens to say, well, my neighbor is doing this, or the person up the street is doing that, and here is a picture or video that may or may not be true. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe that enforcement in this sense has to be visible so that the deterrent effect is immediate. It has to be consistent so that nobody feels exempt. It has to be timely so that no violations do not get addressed in real time. And it has to be coordinated so that gaps between agencies are closed. We've already said that we know when the peak fireworks periods are. The dates are no surprises to any of us. It is the same every year: Independence, Diwali, Christmas, Old Year's Night, Carnival. But these are not days of celebration. Very often they are seasons of celebration. So it does require the municipal police, again, leveraging for the inclusion of our municipal corporations, and the TTPS to have a presence in our communities during these periods. Not to intimidate, Mr. Speaker, but to reassure law-abiding citizens and to deter those who would intend to break the law. So I think, Mr. Speaker, if you pair this with the National Education Program, the pathway to compliance does become clear, does become accessible. Mr. Speaker, enforcement should not be intended to punish joy. It should be there to protect peace, and it is meant to ensure that those who wish to celebrate can do so without violating the rights of others. Mr. Speaker, there are two other issues, and the Attorney General did speak to it, and I would just like to address it briefly. Mr. Speaker, the use of fireworks starts with the purchase of fireworks. And nowhere in this bill have we discussed the purchase of fireworks. And the requirement, Mr. Speaker, because there is a level of ambiguity there. Does the person who is purchasing the firework need to present a permit in order to purchase? Because we could have permits from now until kingdom come. If I could just go and purchase fireworks, then what we are doing is undermining the very legislation that we intend to improve our society. And also, Mr. Speaker, again, the Law Reform Commission's review was wide-reaching and broad. It required a level of discussion, a level of deep dive that was not going to be done in a short period of time because it impacts so many people in our society. And one of those issues here, Mr. Speaker, is about the regulations for sale to minors. The legislation speaks about a permit not being afforded to a person under 18 years old. But the sale of explosives, which is what governs that in our country, not fireworks, the sale of explosives at this stage of where we are right now as a society, that sale is prohibited to persons under the age of 16. And if the bill is $200, the fine is $200, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to see whether the Attorney General speaks to it in his winding up, or we do see, as we go forward, legislation that does treat with these issues that I think directly impact the actual use, the responsible use, and the use by persons who should be old enough to use fireworks. Mr. Speaker, as I started off, the opposition supports this bill because it reflects the work that we have already begun. We support the intent of the bill, because we do believe, as in the legislation that we drafted and forms the vast majority of the bill that is in front of us now, we believe that stakeholders, all stakeholders' views have been considered, that protections that are in there that we have already championed, and that there is a national need that is recognized in the bringing of this legislation. We support it, but we support it with responsibility. We support it in principle. We support it with a firm commitment to the improving the lives of all our citizens. And if strengthened along the lines that we have outlined, with proper oversight, clear protections, strong enforcement and national education, we believe the legislation can bring the relief to persons as they deserve. It can protect the vulnerable, preserve national traditions, and it can support cultural industries, and it can allow citizens, Mr. Speaker, to enjoy fireworks in a way that is responsible, respectful, and safe. And with those words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Port of Spain South.
Mr. Speaker, if the truth is told to the public, we cannot oppose a legislation that we drafted ourselves. This is our legislation. And I will answer the question why it was not brought as yet. Because, Mr. Speaker, as a government then and as an opposition, we are responsible and we understand populists and a populistic approach as opposed to, Mr. Speaker, an approach that understands that we are a plural society in Trinidad and Tobago with competing interests dynamically operating all at the same time. So, if the government was serious about implementing this legislation before Christmas, where are the regulations that are a precondition of this bill, Mr. Speaker? Where are the regulations as it relates to the licenses, as it relates to the applications, as it relates to the form, as it relates to the penalties? And if those regulations are in the hands of the Honourable Member for Tunapuna, we'll be here a long time. We do not oppose. We do not oppose, and we are not here to reject this. But I ask the Honourable Attorney General, before this version, and I call it a copy and paste version of the draft 2021 PNM bill, where were the consultations that preceded the presentation of this bill by this government? Mr. Speaker, for example, and there is a juridical concern we have about this amendment and the bill that has been presented. Let me go directly to it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look at Clause 6, which purports to amend the Evidence Act to now make it admissible that you can have video recorded evidence in a court, here is what it says. The Evidence Act is amended, and you go to B2, right? A video recorded by means of a mobile phone, tablet, iPad, or other similar smart device shall be admissible as evidence. Mr. Speaker, where are the evidential safeguards for this legislation? You would know that the Miscellaneous Act that amended the Evidence Act makes it possible for CCTV footage to be admitted as evidence in court. But there are safeguards. Before you admit the CCTV footage, you must say, at the time in question, the device was working properly. This is the time and date. We checked it to see if there were any bugs. And we then, therefore, we authenticated the veracity of the recording. Mr. Speaker, you just ruled on a matter where you said there is no evidential foundation because all you had was an oral recording. Even though you heard a voice, and the voice may have come from a person, you said, where is the Hansard to back it up? Our fortiori, where's the video? In this amendment that is suggested, where are the safeguards that will make the foundation of an evidential substrata to say the iPhone or the device was working, there was no tampering with it, at the time in question, this is the date, this is the time, this is the place, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, you want to establish that there was no AI intervention, there was no photoshopping, as was done in several instances. How do you prove who took it, when they took it, what was the circumstances of it? And this is the evidential quagmire that this amendment, this clause, has inbuilt in it, Mr. Speaker. When you have a video recording, Mr. Speaker, that is admissible, and it is now mandatory, it says shall be admissible without the safeguards, what happens then when the test, because this is obviously, this part of the legislation is relative to enforcement. Where are the legal safeguards? What is the evidential burden? What will be the standard? Would it be on a balance of probability? Would it be beyond reasonable doubt? What will that be, Mr. Speaker? These are issues that we think this clause 6 ought to be totally excluded and thought out properly, if at all, and brought in a form that is palatable with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago and our judicial standards. And in this regard, we put a marker on this proposed clause that seeks to amend Section 12 of the Evidence Act, particularly, Mr. Speaker, in light of the recent development of AI technology. We now come to the gravamen of our discourse in supporting this piece of legislation. We say that in a society that respects the views of others, that there is a creeping concern of segments of the society that there are implementation of rules and regulations that attack or address a certain diaspora. We want that everybody in Trinidad and Tobago have the right to enjoy their properties in a quiet way. But we also say that people must not feel that they're being disenfranchised. And that is why we say the necessary groundwork, the building of consensus to see that this law fits the realities of our country was not done. And that is why also, Mr. Speaker, that the People's National Movement, although drafting this bill, we hastened slowly to make sure that we got it right. Maybe that's a fault of ours. We've tried to get it perfect all the time. But governing Trinidad and Tobago is not an easy task, and you have to address competing interests. Because people, we say, must have a voice in the laws that govern them. And it is a democratic obligation. It is not a favor. And if it is, Mr. Speaker, that you take a populist stand, not understanding, not reading Professor Lloyd Bradford, Professor Carrington, to understand that there's a plural society that emanated from a plantation society. So we must understand that, yes, there's a balancing interest for persons who are affected by the fireworks, but also that fireworks and its uses form a part of the tapestry of our existence in Trinidad and Tobago, and particular the East-West Corridor. It seems that there's a concentration, Mr. Speaker. It seems, and I will expound on it, Mr. Speaker. The cancellation effects, the double taxes on alcohol, the cancellation and of sponsorship.
Mr. Speaker, please. 48.1, the member is now speaking about the cancellation of FETs and alcohol and the diaspora and so on.
Congressman South, I'm imploring you, let's skip along a little bit, shall we?
Mr. Speaker, the point I am making does not offend 48.1 respectfully, because I am showing how this bill, I am not challenged, how this bill could be part of an artillery. An artillery. And on this side, we continue to stand in the gap. So we also say, Mr. Speaker, that the measures must not be seen, and the perception must not be that measures are aimed at particularly targeting perceived PNM constituencies. That's the point. That is the point I am making. And I make it to say, Mr. Speaker, I make it to say that I use that submission and I use the evidence, or I use the events, Mr. Speaker, about the activities.
48.6. Targeting, that the government is targeting a certain demographic that he's referring to.
Look, in the spirit of cooperation as we've been getting along with this bill, I'm going to give a little leeway, but I'm going to ask Port of Spain South if we could continue. You know how to sterilize your contribution, right?
Speaker, after the intervention of the Honorable Minister of Defense,
you know, there are several ways I could respond to that, which I will sterilize my tongue and not respond to. So let's move on.
So what I say is this, that we have to be a little cautious, and in the perception, Mr. Speaker, I'm not accusing, I'm saying a perception. And it's a creeping perception, Mr. Speaker. We understand governance, but governance and reigning must not be perceived to be at one segment. That's the point I'm trying to make. And as we support this legislation, Mr. Speaker, that is why we flag our concerns. And an additional concern that we have, Mr. Speaker, relates to the clause 5, 92.2, and we would like to be added to that. Apart from that being, and may I find it, Mr. Speaker, so I can be more specific. 92.2, Mr. Speaker, speaks about the application going to the Commissioner of Police. And you make an application, a person shall not discharge unless he has a valid permit.
Is it
99. 99.1.2, sorry, it is correct. 99.1 and 99.2. We are proposing, Mr. Speaker, the addition of an online permit application, which may tend to make the process less cumbersome. So after 99.1.2, we are proposing a 99.3 that reads that an online permit application system will be established under this system. That may cure the backlog from the Commissioner of Police and give people an opportunity to make an application online, and may make doing business less cumbersome. Also, we also take, and Mr. Speaker, I don't want to be accused of tedious repetition, but the issue of the removal and the leaving of the fire service as the only referable entity in this is of serious concern, particularly as it relates to the municipal corporations, Mr. Speaker. And we are asking, Mr. Speaker, respectfully, that they reconsider the removal of the 3 entities, and at least because the EMA has said that it does not have the teeth. In the report, we have done our homework, and we have read the report coming out from the Law Commission. the EMA in that report has said that they do not have the teeth or the remit to do the enforcement of fireworks. I may not agree, but they have said so, so we understand that. But the Civil Aviation Authority must have some input and some relevant input in this issue, and also the relevant municipal corporations, because they would know, Mr. Speaker, better than anyone else, the topography of the municipality within which the firework is being discharged or within which the request for the permit is being made. So we think it is relevant, and we are asking at least that they consider, the Honorable Attorney General at the committee stage considers the re-inclusion of Civil Aviation Authority and the EMA and the Municipal Corporation. Mr. Speaker, we have spoken about the extension from the 14 days to the 28 days, and what really it is, Mr. Speaker, is a traditional, it's akin to or sibling to a stay of execution. And in a stay of execution, you never get 14 days, Mr. Speaker. You start at 28 days. We prefer 42, but we understand it's law enforcement, so we are asking the Honourable Attorney General to consider.
Mr. Speaker, 55(1)(b), this was already said, and our Prime Minister also said she would look into it.
All right. I think, all right. Member, I think the member is giving a rationale for it that has not been previously explained, so continue.
Speaker, and the rationale. Mr. Speaker, sometimes I think I'm in the twilight zone when I hear some of the objections. Mr. Speaker, the 28 days, more importantly, and Mr. Speaker, apart from that, there is included there in that clause a provision that allows for a time frame, and I would want to read that clause, Mr. Speaker, into the Hansard. We would want to also advise, Mr. Speaker, that as it relates to the latitude given, that it goes, the outer limit would be the 42 days, as the other times that may be prescribed. We are suggesting that because I think that it makes a little more sense, and it will account for finality in these proceedings, as opposed to when you are paying it, or if you are paying, and, Mr. Speaker, bring an end to the time frame allowed where you say, look, I'm not going to pay, I'm going to contest the fixed penalty notice. So we are asking that that time frame be specified to the outer limit of 42 days. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I continue, the other aspect of this bill that is of some concern to us is that we wondered about the fireworks regulatory system that does not seem to be in place. This bill focuses primarily on the use of fireworks. And while the regulation of its use is important and significant, and we acknowledge that, it ignores sale, distribution, and storage of the fireworks. And that, we say, is critical, and these are critical areas that affect public safety and market accountability. Mr. Speaker, the storage of fireworks is something that must be regulated if it is that public safety is a primary concern, and I ask the Honourable Attorney General to consider that and bring appropriate legislation in order to account for that. And that is why the job, as Voice said, we were far from finished with this legislation. We also propose that all vendors and importers be properly licensed with clear requirement for the storage, record keeping, and inspection. And the enforcement officers have the authority to seize unprotected and unsafe storage of the fireworks. That is something that we say is important, and we ask that that be given consideration, particularly fireworks that are sold illegally or stored illegally. It ensures a full regulatory framework for the sale of fireworks, from the selling process to the display process. The removal of the critical oversight and notifications I have dealt with, and to say, Mr. Speaker, that the oversight that we asked for were to deal with air safety, environmental noise and wildlife, fire hazard, and local community management. And we say that that is a critical issue, and we say it has not been adequately dealt with, and we ask for consideration to be given to that. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have not heard from the Honorable Attorney General, and we are going to suggest an amendment, and maybe in his wrapping up, which should come soon, he would explain to us why was the Civil Aviation Authority removed when fireworks routinely reach altitudes that intersect with low-flying aircraft. We would want an explanation, Mr. Speaker, for that removal, because it seems to our simple minds to be counterintuitive and against the policy behind the proposed legislation. Although the bill is forward-thinking, and that's because it was P&M drafted. This is our bill, you know. This is our bill, you know. The checks and balances that have been removed weakens the safety. You have it. And it weakens the safety and protections. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, the 20, I just want to say, and I will edify the honorable members on the other side, in the drafting of the 2021 bill, we considered and understood the severe impact that fireworks may have on wildlife and livestock. And whilst the 2025 bill still mentions sensitive areas, by removing the agencies that are linked to these areas, it has weakened the teeth of the bill. And we say it's a backward step in the law, and it's a backward step from what was originally proposed. Mr. Speaker, I now go to classification and safety. It is my respectful opinion that we need, and there may be a need, and we need to have some consideration of it, for the classification of fireworks by hazard levels. That is the international standard, distinguishing between toy fireworks, consumer outdoor fireworks, and professional display fireworks. This would allow safety standards permitting an enforcement, and the enforcement of the legislation would be tailored appropriately, and it will protect citizens and users, and it will reduce the risks throughout. Also, the issue of the noise control, we see it is there, and we think that that is a forward step in the future usage of fireworks. Mr. Speaker, under the heading of expansion of exemption days without the proper safeguards, we are of the opinion that The 2021 bill allowed fireworks without a permit only on public holidays, New Year's Eve, with specific time restrictions. And on New Year's Eve, for example, the 2021 bill permitted fireworks between 11:30 and 1, providing a reasonable window for celebration. In contrast, the 2025 bill maintains these exemptions, and the window for New Year's Eve is only from 11:30 to 12:30. While this might seem like a small change, it marks a shift towards expanding exemptions without adequate safeguards and reducing the flexibility of the 2021 bill, which still strove to ensure public safety, and that is a concern that we have. The penultimate concern, Mr. Speaker, or no, I have two more: permits and the notice period. The bill requires permits for the use of fireworks issued solely by the Commissioner of Police. What it has done, and this practice, it centralizes permits, and that is impractical, particularly during peak periods of the use of fireworks, such as Christmas and Carnival. And we are advocating a delegated permit system, along with the amendment that we are proposing to circulate with the online application. That may take the burden off of one office holder and may make doing business a little easier. The notice period for firework displays is currently 14 days, which is insufficient for large events. We are proposing maybe an extension of that to, again, the 28 days, giving both the authorities and the organizers adequate time to plan and adequate time to address safety concerns. So it is something that we ask be considered relative to the notice period, not being 14 days, but 20 days, which would augment the period of notification and allow the persons involved, well, now it's just the fire services, but the organizers and also the residents, because they may want to hear from the residents, they may want to hear from the homes, they may want to hear from the interested parties their views. 14 days may not be an adequate period, so we are asking Honorable Attorney General for the consideration of an augmentation of that to 28 days. Mr. Speaker, there are cultural considerations. Under this bill, no permit is required for fireworks on public holidays on New Year's Eve. We say Carnival is arguably the largest cultural and tourism event in Trinidad and Tobago and is not included in this exemption, despite the fact that fireworks are central to main Carnival events. Any legislation that ignores Carnival risks cultural alienation and disruption and may lead to the bottom line, economic loss. We ask Mr. Speaker, I checked to see what were the exemptions and if Carnival was included as a festival or an event. It's not. We really may need Honorable Attorney General to consider that, because it is part of our tapestry. It is part of how we live, and we are asking that that be considered. The enforcement penalties and education, we do support enforcement mechanisms, including fines for breaches, but we would recommend a graduated penalty system as it relates to the fact that repeat offenders should maybe face increased penalties, including imprisonment for serious recidivists. We stress the importance, and the honorable member from Diego Martin, Central, did education. I can't better that submission, and I want to commend him on his erudite rendition of the education. I want to commend him on that. I say no more. Mr. Speaker, I go back to clause 6, which I will ask for 9 minutes of my 15 minutes, Mr. Speaker. Clause 6 of the bill, it really is a bothersome clause. And I will not go into the technical aspect, well, why not amend the act? Because I suspect when they say it's amended, it will be amended in the act itself. So it's not, you don't need a standalone. I had a little cognitive dissonance, but I got around it, so I understand it. You all will not understand cognitive dissonance. But what is being said here, yeah, they wouldn't even understand cognitive. What happens, Mr. Speaker, while the bill introduces consequential amendment to the Evidence Act that allows video recordings from mobile phones and tablets as admissible, Mr. Speaker, it raises privacy concerns, it raises procedural concerns, it raises concerns as it relates to persons. What about the person who is being recorded? If that person takes objection, that may lead to a fracas. It may lead, Mr. Speaker, to it may very well lead, I don't want you to tape me, get out of my space. That may be a legitimate response, especially if you go on the person's premises to tape it. What happens? Stand your ground? Stand your ground. Stand your ground. Wow. Stand your ground, people. So they see the fireworks, Mr. Speaker. You take up your device, and you move on the person's premises. And here the nice part about it, Mr. Speaker, if we follow some of the rationale from Toko Sandy Grande, when the person done tape and they're going back, you know what they put, and they turn their back, bullet. Bullet. Mr. Speaker, this is a clause that is of serious concern, particularly if the video is taken without the consent, Mr. Speaker, particularly as it relates to chain of custody and unclear and ambiguous guidelines for admissibility. A change of this magnitude really, Mr. Speaker, and I understood my dissonance, it really requires a standalone compendium clause in the Evidence Act, which will deal with process, procedure, admissibility issues as contained in the Miscellaneous Act. So, Mr. Speaker, here is what we say. We do not oppose in print. Mr. Speaker, I really would like to make my presentation in silence. Please, I beg you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Go ahead, I think it's stopped.
Mr. Speaker, we do not oppose the regulating of the fireworks. As we say, that's our brainchild, the PNM. Well done. Well done, PNM. It focuses, well done, yeah, well done, well done. But this bill in its current form, it focuses narrowly on use, ignoring sale, distribution, and storage. It centralizes authority excessively in one office holder, that is the Commissioner of Police. It requires practical adjustments to permit notice periods. It needs classification of noise and safety standard that is lacking. It requires public education and transitional provisions that have not been provided. And most importantly, my last 2 points, it lacks and lacked meaningful consultation, and it fails, Mr. Speaker, to account for carnival and major cultural events in Trinidad and Tobago, which shapes our plural society, and that is the concern. So in those circumstances, Mr. Speaker, we ask that the amendments we propose be considered respectfully, considered at least. Wow.
At 10. Let him finish in peace.
Mr. Speaker, we ask that clause 6 be revisited in its entirety. We ask that the proposed amendments that we have circulated be given serious consideration, particularly the online application system. We ask that the 14-day notice period be extended to 28 days, but the penalty, most importantly, the time to pay the penalty, we ask that that be augmented from 14 to 28 days. And in taking my seat, Mr. Speaker, I would want to commend the work of the People's National Movement, and honestly, Mr. Speaker, because with all that, the AG brought it, and we support it today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Remember, it's 4:26. It's just 4 minutes shy of the usual tea break. But I propose to take the tea break now, and we return at 5:15. This sitting is suspended until 5:15. Thank you very much.